From my rant about what Chris Sutton had said?
Oh yeah, I was just listening. I just thought it was going to be something really, really small, and I ended up sitting back for about 9 minutes just listening to you rant about Scottish football. I thought, what's going on here?
People loved it. Basically, to fill you in, Chris, if you didn't hear it, Chris Sutton tweeted yesterday morning after the Arsenal defeat, blimey, if a Scottish team had lost and humiliated 10-2, we'd be hearing how bad the standard of the league is. I did a massive rant on it yesterday, and Chris wanted his right to reply, which we're always happy to give on the show, on talkSPORT, and Chris is with us. How you doing, Chris?
Good afternoon.
What do you want to right to reply about? What do you got to say?
Well, just to get things in some sort of order, Adrian, I mean, the first thing was I tweeted, and then you responded to the tweet, but you misrepresented and you misled what I said, and you twisted what I said.
I've just read it out.
Yeah. But
how can I twist it if I read it out word for word?
Well, in your rant, you then twisted it. You twisted what I said, and you lied. You said that I said the Scottish Premier League was on par with the English Premier League. This is a lie. I never said that. You said the Premier League in England, I said the Premier League in England has the same problems as in Scotland. That is a lie.
But the implication of the tweet is, if a Scottish team had lost and humiliated 10-2, we'd be hearing how bad the standard of the league is. That was in reply to an English team losing 10-2. So you explain the difference.
Well, yeah. Well, if you hear me out, I've just said
you. Yeah, but you can't say somebody's lied and then expect them just to sit here.
Well, you have lied, because when did I say that the Scottish Premier League is on par with the English Premier League?
By saying, let me answer that question. You have said here, you've asked a question, I'll answer it. If a Scottish team, I'll read you word for word what you said, if a Scottish team had lost and got humiliated 10-2, we'd be hearing how bad the standard of the league is. Yeah. The implication of that being, correct me if I'm wrong here, the implication of that being, Chris, that as an English team lost 10-2, we should be hearing how bad the standard of the English league is.
If you want to interpret my tweets, why don't you ring me? All I was saying, Adrian, okay, that in recent years, with all the money and the revenue at English clubs' disposal, that they have underperformed. I did not say once that the Scottish Premier League is on par with the English Premier League. You lied. You misquoted me.
That's my interpretation of what you've written. I'm not quite sure. Explain to me how that can be interpreted another way.
Well, I've just explained how it was interpreted.
No, your tweet, how can that be interpreted another way?
Well, you've just made things up. Don't try and...
No, I've quoted your tweet word for word, Chris. How can it be interpreted? It's a simple question. If you can't answer it, it's fine, but just say I can't answer it.
You can't... Well, are you willing to admit that you lied?
No, absolutely not, because you've said here, let me read it to you. I'll give you one more chance. In this tweet you have written, and I'll read it word for word, blimey, if a Scottish... Let people listen to it. They can't hear what I'm saying unless if you're speaking over me or trying to. So let me make it clear so there's nobody confused. Blimey, if a Scottish team had lost and humiliated 10-2, we will be hearing how bad the standard of the league is. Arsenal did lose 10-2. Let me ask you the question, because I really want a clear answer on this. Arsenal lost 10-2. Therefore, I'm deducing from that, you're suggesting we should be hearing... Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because if I've got it wrong, I'll hold my hands up. But are you implying here... Let me ask the question, Chris. Are you implying here that we should be hearing how bad the standard of the Premier League is? Because last time I looked, Leicester, who are fighting relegation, are still in the Champions League, and Man City, who got to the semi-finals finishing fourth last year, are still in the Champions League.
Can you? No, you've got. No, I have a right to reply, but can you get the translator, or maybe get Goffey to translate for you? All I simply was saying from the tweet, listen carefully, that in recent years, English teams have underperformed with all the resources at their disposal, Adrian. Do you understand that? So then, therefore, you can't go off on your own tangents and misrepresent what I tweeted.
But you're clearly referring to Arsenal's 10-2 defeat. You're clearly referring to that and using that.
Underachieved.
No, hang on. You haven't talked about previous years.
You tried to claim yesterday that Arsenal aren't a representative of the Premier League. Are you mad?
That's not what I said at all. That isn't what I said at all. It's not what I said at all.
No, you did say that. And
No, I said they are representative of the Premier League, but so too are Man City and Leicester, who are still in the Champions League.
Big thing on the television this morning, fake news. It was fake news what you said yesterday. You misquoted.
Well, which bit?
Misrepresented.
Which bit? Because it went on for about 9 minutes.
Well, I've just told you, you lied. Listen, I'm calling you a liar.
It's okay saying you lied, but you haven't backed that up. I mean, I could sue you if I wanted to. So what bit is a lie? Chris, hold on. I know your dentist uses scaffolding, but just hold on a second, Chris. You said if a Scottish team had lost and humiliated 10-2. Now, that's a clear reference to Arsenal. They were humiliated. It was 10-2 and they lost. So therefore, that's a clear reference to Arsenal. We'd be hearing how bad the standard of the league is. There's nothing to do with what happened years ago. You're clearly referring to Arsenal's defeat. No. What I've done is talked about the state Arsenal are in at the moment, which is they're in poor form. The manager is under massive pressure. They've not been winning games. They've just lost at home to Watford.
Adrian, as you do, and, sometimes you're quite factual. You've assumed, and I heard Goffey's, what did Goffey say yesterday? That it was the best head's gone. What, the best lie, Goffey? I mean, you two are like Roger De Courcy and Nookie Bear. I mean, it's embarrassing. You're a lapdog. You're not his puppet, Goffey. I admired you as a sportsman, but you're like a puppet sitting there yesterday.
Chris, you're shouting a lot of personal... Chris, you're shouting a lot of personal stuff, which is, I know it's what you do, it's your MO, but without any substance to it.
Quote me, Adrian.
You're wasting time. You wanted a right to reply, and all you're doing is shouting abuse at me and Darren Goff.
Well,
can we have some substance to it? Because I'll tell you what, let's get to the conclusion that I drew. See if you can get some sense out of you here. So my view was the English Premier League is not the best, but it is the most exciting and generally the most competitive. Leicester, who finished 14th, won the title. Chelsea, mid-table last season, going to win the title this season. Scottish football is in crisis. Celtic's success this season is great for Celtic, but not healthy for Scottish football. Too many heads in sand. Next year it'll be 20 years since Scotland last went to a major tournament. Sutton should turn his attention to that rather than just trying to impress Celtic fans by saying ludicrous stuff like the Premier League in England has the same problems as the Scottish Premiership. And also trying to impress people north of the border just by shouting at an ex-England cricketer and shouting abuse. What's the point of that?
To be fair, Ed, Chris, I had no interest in your tweet, Chris. I have no interest in what you say, mate. So it didn't bother me. So I'm not a lapdog. By the way, mate. By the way, I'm not a lapdog for anywhere, mate. I've never have been and never will be. So I have my own opinions. I'm an opinionated person, same as you are, right? I'm nobody's lapdog, mate. Let me tell you that. That's one thing I'm not.
Can I just say this, Adrian? You quoted that real analysis takes more than a tweet.
Yep.
Okay?
Well, clearly, because you're now twisting that tweet, but go on.
This is the guy who backed Mark Warburton to carry on his excellent reputation. These are your words.
Yep.
Mark Warburton ran away from Rangers.
Well, that's your interpretation of that. I think what we've got to see is what happens with his career. Chris,
it seemed that there are people north of the border, even self-proclaimed experts, who genuinely thought Rangers would challenge Celtic this season.
Yeah.
Nobody with serious football knowledge thought that.
Correct.
You're insulting all the Rangers fans in the stadium at Ibrox at the start of the season who held up their 55 banners. You're a man...
So hang on, are you telling me you thought... Hang on, did you think Rangers would challenge for the title?
If Celtic... Listen, just hear me out.
Did you think Rangers would challenge for the title? Was I wrong?
No, I didn't.
No, I'm asking you, did you?
Mark Warburton did. If Celtic lose 4 and we win...
Mark Warburton always said he was going for second place.
You said this guy... I'll tell you
Basically, the fundamental here, Chris, is you've asked for the right to reply and already changed the subject. I think that's quite sad. You've had 10 minutes and you've already changed the subject to Mark Warburton. And you know what? With Mark Warburton, what people seem to forget, Chris, let me just explain to you, because your England career wasn't brilliant. You decided to cut it off before it even started. However, one more. You got 2 in one day, first and last. And what I'll say to you is that Mark Warburton had got the Rangers promoted where other managers couldn't. And let's see what happens now in his career. It may go one way, it may go the other. But if you think England appoint top-level managers,
they have a man who blamed randomness on losing. They have telling me about real analysis. The only thing you got right was there's a unique figure in Scottish football history.
That you
absolutely.
that you seem to be unaware. Gareth Southgate is the England manager, so the days when the FA appointed top-level managers are gone. And Mark Warburton may be in the frame. He was in the frame for the under-21s, which might have passed you by as well. But I don't know why you've changed subject, Chris. Chris, why have you changed subject? Chris, why have you changed subject?
Well, let's go back to the tweet then. What substance is in your tweet?
Well, I don't know how long you want. You wanted a right to reply. I thought you might actually come up with something concise other than calling me names that you can't substantiate and calling an ex-England cricket legend names as well.
Well,
that's what you've done.
What
have you done to disprove what I was saying?
Quoted me, misinterpreted me, twisted. And then you said about what you said that you...
well, I'm waiting for the proper interpretation. If I've got it wrong, what's the proper interpretation? What's the proper interpretation?
Giving somebody a chance, is it?
What's the proper interpretation?
Some of your tweets today call...
What's the proper interpretation?
The proper... Listen for the last time. Or can you get someone in the studio...
What's the proper interpretation? Because we're running out of time here.
What I'm saying is in recent years, with all the money and revenue English clubs have at their disposal, they have underachieved in Europe. Do you understand
Yeah,
that?
but so what's the 10-2 got to do with it? What's the 10-2? Why didn't you just say that instead of going on about the 10-2? Because the 10-2 refers to Arsenal specifically.
You wanted to broadcast...
The 10-2 refers to Arsenal specifically, Chris.
Yes, but then you...
Why didn't you bring in Man City from last season? Why didn't you bring in Leicester and Man City this season who are still in?
I don't know what you're talking...
Because you're referring to Arsenal there.
I don't actually know. I mean, can you... do you understand? I've explained to you 3, 4, 5 times, and you just don't get it.
I'm coming back to you. Let me ask you another question, Chris, and I really want the answer to this one. Let's get this clear, because all you're saying is I don't understand, and I want to understand. So let me ask you again. Your tweet says 10-2, okay? It refers to that scoreline, which clearly refers to Arsenal. It makes no reference to years previous, which I would have acknowledged had it been on there, but it's not on there. How can I read your mind?
Well, exactly. And at last we have got to... How can you read my mind? You could read my mind enough to say that the Scottish Premier League's on par with the English Premier League, which was a lie because I never said it. And you can read my mind to say the Premier League in England has the same problems as in Scotland, which I never said, which is incredible.
So why bring in if a Scottish team had lost? Hang on a second.
Misquoted.
Well, let's have a proper conversation, Chris. If you made that point, I understand that point, and you've said if a Scottish team had lost and got humiliated 10-2, we'd be hearing how bad the standard of the league is.
Celtic lost 7-0 to Barcelona.
Hold on one second. I mean, how can we sort this out if all you're doing is barking? Right. Let me ask this question. You're talking about if a Scottish team had done what Arsenal had done, we'd be hearing how bad the standard of the league is. Am I wrong in looking at that and thinking, okay, he's making a clear comparison there? You're saying if a Scottish team, so you're comparing the leagues. Have I got that wrong?
I'm not comparing. No, you have.
So why bring in if a Scottish team? Why not just say English teams have been poor over the last few years?
Because what actually happened, Adrian, I don't know whether you're aware, Celtic lost 7-0 to Barcelona earlier this season.
But you didn't mention that.
And it all came out. The Scottish League is hopeless, this, that, the question. And we know the difference, Adrian, between the Scottish League and the English Premier League, and it's financial and it's money. And if we're going to be fair to Celtic, I didn't think Celtic would get in the Europa League this season. They were that bad last season. They have overachieved. And the point is they went toe-to-toe with Manchester City twice. While I accept their individual games, and you're quite right to bring that up, Celtic have overperformed after last season where it was, an absolute debacle. But all I was saying, Adrian, is that the English Premier League teams have underachieved with the finances at their disposal, and you misquoted me. Simple as that.
Well, I never did. Celtic are the very best that Scotland have got to offer. We'd agree with that, yeah?
I would think so.
That's undeniable, isn't it? So when I say Celtic lose 7-0, what would happen to Hamilton if they went to Barcelona? It worries me. So Celtic, the very best, I'm about to explain, just hold back.
Good.
Celtic are the very best that Scotland have to offer. Arsenal are not the very best England have to offer and haven't been for many, many years, Chris.
What's Arsenal's budget compared to Celtic, Adrian?
They're totally irrelevant. totally irrelevant to the debate we're having. Totally irrelevant to the debate we're having.
We just go down your line, Adrian.
Well, it is totally irrelevant because if you want to bring that in, then we've got to wait and see. We can only have this debate after Man City and Leicester go out.
Let's have a debate, but let's not include budgets. Come on, Adrian.
We can only have the debate. We can only have the debate after Manchester City and Leicester go out. If you're saying that the standard of the English league is really... Well, I'm asking you a question, Chris.
Last few seasons, and you said about real analysis. Manchester City got through to the semi-final last season? How many teams
and finished fourth?
Quarter-finals of season 4.
Listen, I'm more than happy to say Arsenal's record has been terrible.
Chelsea got through to the semi-final. How many teams in 12-13?
Arsenal's record has been terrible in Europe. I bang on about it all the time. I mean, I had one of your incredibly rude followers tweeted me today saying, why don't you have a go at Arsenal? I mean, how unknowledgeable could you possibly be? I'm always having a go at Arsenal for being useless in Europe. I did a debate saying they shouldn't even be in the Champions League because they don't even try to win it. And so therefore I'm not quite sure what we're doing. Are we waiting till the end of the season? Are we having this debate? I want to get to the crux of this debate. Are we having the debate about now? Are we waiting until Man City and Leicester have gone out?
The crux of the debate. Here's one for you. Hapoel Beersheva, Celtic beat in the Champions League qualifier. Everybody said they're useless. They're from Israel. They're useless. And then they knocked Southampton out of the Europa League, and they're not a bad team.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. Off the back of that game, I mean, I've lost track of when the Europa League became ever so important. I mean, Fulham, Middlesbrough got to finals. Well, I'm just explaining to you. Fulham and Middlesbrough got to finals, which tells you what the Premier League think of it. Well, clearly I have, because I've just given you 2 examples. But Celtic beating Beersheva and Southampton losing. Are you saying then, your conclusion there is Celtic are better than Southampton, is that right?
No, I'm not saying
So
that.
what are you saying?
Again, you're trying to twist my...
Well, what are you saying?
Celtic this season have punched above their weight with the resources which they have. You have been insulting towards Celtic, Adrian. I think you said, did you say Moussa Dembele, that he went from the Championship to the Scottish Premiership, and that was a backward step? Ridiculous. Come on, Adrian. That's ridiculous. You said that Brendan Rodgers did well at Liverpool for 5 minutes. There's always little digs. You don't...
Hold on 1 second. Where did Neil Lennon go after... Where did Neil Lennon go after Celtic? Where did Neil Lennon go after Celtic?
He
went to Bolton in the Championship, so...
Yeah.
What on earth are you talking about? And took them down.
What has that got to do with anything?
And now he's in the Scottish Championship. I'm talking about the levels. What are we saying here? Are you saying that are you saying that Celtic would hold their own in the Premier League? It's hypothetical.
Just try and understand this, Adrian. That Celtic don't have the budget and the revenue which the English Premier League clubs have. Do you understand that, Adrian? If Celtic and Rangers had gone down into the Premier League in the early 2000s, they'd have really competed well. That probably isn't ever going to happen. It's about money and budget. But your dislike and
no, are you saying I dislike Celtic? Is that it?
Well,
is that it?
All I'll do is I'll just...
Is that all it is? Because that's a Twitter troll nonsense. The point that was being made was about the standard of the league. If the very best if the very best Scotland have to offer lose 7-0 in Barcelona and finish bottom of the group stages, first time they've been in the Champions League proper for years. Why aren't you listening? What is?
Well, I'm listening.
Well, listen then. Stop talking and listen.
Rubbish as well.
If Celtic are the very best that Scotland have to offer, do you think there's no problem with the league whatsoever in Scotland? There's nothing needs addressing at all.
No, and there was
But that's the point I'm making. It's not anti-Celtic.
There are problems. Of course there are, and the problems mainly are financial.
So we're agreeing then.
Listen, hang on, Adrian. Don't try and twist.
Unbelievable.
But don't try and twist things.
Yeah, but you got caught up with Twitter trolls, Celtic Twitter trolls who just hate. They think I hate Celtic. I couldn't care less about Celtic. I couldn't care less about Rangers.
There we go. I don't hate Celtic, but really? But
I couldn't. Yeah, that's the point. You listen to too many idiots on Twitter.
Good, and now we'll go on the personal Twitter one. You are.
Well, Chris, I had one of your very respectful followers saying to me, "You're best friends with Mark Warburton." He's a man I've never even met. That's how deluded some of your followers are, and you get caught up in that nonsense.
I just suppose he's seen the stuff you said about Mark Warburton for England, and he has an excellent reputation. And then
I haven't said Mark Warburton for England. You're twisting that.
Come on, Adrian. I mean, honestly, do your homework. Come on.
Do my homework on what?
Well, I mean, that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek after you said yesterday in your rant that I should do my homework. I'd suggest you do your homework, Adrian.
We'll leave it there, Chris. You had a right to reply, and sadly, it didn't quite come off. I mean, there's a lot of talking, but not a lot of substance. Appreciate you calling in.
Hang on, Ed. All I'll say on that is, but if we can clip together the piece we did last week on Celtic and how well they've done this season, and the two performances against Manchester City, how well they did to compete, I'd love to send that by a tweet to Chris, yeah? That'd be absolutely brilliant. And then he might actually understand. But if you listen, Chris, if you listen to the show, right? If you did listen to the show, we've actually... Well, there you go then, mate. So you've got no base to base this argument on, have you? Because we actually have praised Celtic. We've praised Rangers, we've criticised Rangers, we've praised Mark Warburton, we've criticised Mark Warburton, we've praised Brendan Rodgers, we've praised the Celtic fans because it's gone up 23% their attendances this year. Do you know why that is? Because Celtic are playing wonderful football and Brendan Rodgers has brought that to Celtic. So if you listen to our debate we did last week, you would actually realise that we have praised Celtic.
You know, I apologise, I didn't hear your debate last week. You know, I don't listen to your shows with the greatest respect.
And you're taking too much notice on Twitter then, aren't you?
I'm really sorry about that.
Chris, listen, when
you called me out, Adrian, but thank you.
Of course, I love the right to reply. I love the fact that you've come on.
Brilliant.
What I also love is that when you're struggling to break it into the media, we gave you a chance on Matchday Live, but let me give you a real solid piece of advice. Don't listen to idiots on Twitter, because all they'll do is turn you towards Celtic and all that love, and they'll try and make you hate people who pass any kind of comment, positive or negative, about their club. Get off Twitter, listen to real people. That's the important thing. And listen to this show. There are all sorts of views being phoned in. That will give you a broader range of opinions. Chris, really appreciate you calling in. Chris Sutton with his right to reply on talkSPORT.